What message do you have to the Prince fans?
Just keep saying prayers for everyone, for the family.
There was no sign of this. It's just...
You know, everyone gets sick once in a while. We don't know. We're going to find out.
First Diddy party I went to was at Prince's house. So you want to go to Prince's house to the Diddy party where Tyrese is performing and Demi Moore and Ashton Kutcher are swinging on swings. That is what's happening on the other side of the wall. And so the one thing that makes this party different than a Jamie Foxx party or any other celebrity party that wrangles a bunch of young women or guys or whatever too, is that Diddy didn't let you bring your security in the party.
The courtroom was tense. Sheila E. stepped forward, sharing a private confession from Prince that no one saw coming. And then Diddy's reaction sent shockwaves through the room. Here's how it all unfolded.
But here's the twist. What if Prince had the cameras rolling the whole time? He was known for being private, calculated, and always in control. So what if he had incriminating footage and that's why he never attended the parties? Well, some folks definitely believe he may have kept the footage or even handed it over to someone before he passed. And now whispers are growing that his name could come up in court. Child, this trial is about to be one for the books, and I'm here for all of it.
Sheila E. isn't just any name tied to Prince. She's one of the few people who truly understood him, both as a person and an artist. Their relationship ran deeper than mere collaboration. Sheila wasn't just playing music with him. She was sharing a life filled with creative highs, intimate conversations, and personal truths. She became part of Prince's inner circle, a rarity for someone as guarded as he was. And remember, Prince wasn't just selective about his music, he was selective about people. If he invited you in close, it wasn't by accident. Their connection wasn't just obvious behind closed doors, it played out for the world to see. Sheila E. worked with Prince on some of his most iconic music, from their hit A Love Bazaar to her unforgettable performances during his tours. He didn't just feature her as a drummer or a singer, he elevated her to a co-star. Prince trusted Sheila to embody his vision and in many ways co-created. She had this way of matching his energy on stage, blending perfectly into his eccentric and electrifying world. And outside of music, she was often seen alongside him at events, as if they shared an unspoken bond that didn't need public explanation. But here's where some eyebrows start to rise. Why is Sheila E. only revealing these so-called words from Prince now? That's the question her skeptics have asked, and it's a fair one. Prince has been gone for years, and throughout that time, Sheila has spoken openly about their friendship, their love of music, and their shared memories. So why wait? Why drop something this explosive in the middle of a courtroom drama involving Diddy, of all people? For some, the timing feels a little too perfect. Maybe too calculated. Is this about her loyalty to Prince, or is there another motive at play? Critics have raised concerns about how personal testimony like this can shape public perception in ways that sometimes overshadow fact. Still, Sheila's credibility can't just be dismissed because of the timing. Over the years, her words about Prince have often been consistent and backed by their shared history. The two weren't just collaborators, they relied on one another as friends.
Still, Sheila E's credibility isn't easy to dismiss. For years, her words about Prince have stayed consistent, heartfelt, respectful, and deeply personal. She wasn't a fleeting friend or industry acquaintance. She was one of the few he let truly see him, that she's spoken about the private advice he gave her, his philosophies, and his hidden concerns about the industry. Prince trusted her with things he rarely shared with anyone else, and that's what makes his testimony so powerful. Because in high-profile court cases like this, personal accounts can be devastatingly effective. They offer context. They paint pictures. And when someone like Sheila E., a close, trusted confidant, says Prince had something to say about Diddy, well, that matters. She didn't give vague statements. Her words were clear, direct, specific. According to Sheila, Prince had concerns, serious ones. And if she's telling the truth, then Prince didn't just leave behind legendary music. He left behind warnings. Warnings tied directly to the man now at the center of this courtroom storm. And that changes everything. Now, the spotlight turns to Diddy, not just his public image, but his past, his choices, and what this trial could ultimately cost him. Because this is just the beginning. And if Sheila E's testimony is just the first thread, you can bet the rest of the story is about to unravel fast.
It's been extremely challenging, but also remarkably empowering and healing for me. I hope that my testimony has given strength and a voice to other survivors and can help others who have suffered to speak up and also heal from abuse and fear. For me, the more I heal, the more I can remember. And the more I can remember, the more I will never forget.
For months, Diddy's legal troubles have dominated headlines. But nothing hit harder than the courtroom moment when Sheila E. took the stand. What was once the golden image of a music mogul, polished by decades of success in business, entertainment, and culture, now flickers beneath the harsh spotlight of legal scrutiny. The lawsuits, the allegations, the industry whispers, they've all converged into a firestorm. And now, the pressure is boiling over. The current case is layered and complex. It's not just about one accusation. It's a tangle of claims involving misconduct, exploitive business practices, and a long-standing narrative that Diddy has used his power to control and silence within the industry. Each new lawsuit seems to trigger another. The dominoes are falling fast, and they're falling hard. At stake, everything that Diddy's legacy, his empire, his influence, years of building a brand, a movement, an identity, all now teetering on the edge. An unfavorable verdict wouldn't just dent his reputation, it could obliterate it. We're talking about potential financial collapse, severed industry ties, and irreparable damage to his status as one of hip-hop's most influential figures. Outside the courtroom, the media frenzy is relentless. Inside, the air is tight with tension. Observers describe a very different Diddy, one whose usual charisma and swagger are dialed way down. The charm, the control, the larger-than-life presence has been replaced by a quiet, almost withdrawn figure. During tough questioning, he's been seen gripping the sides of his chair, rubbing his temples, jaw clenched in frustration. Every gesture, every glance is under the microscope. People aren't just watching what's said, they're watching him dot his silence, his sighs, even the way he rolls his eyes at a line of questioning. All of it fuels speculation that the pressure may finally be cracking the facade. And then came the wild card. Sheila E. From the moment the trial began, rumors swirled. Some insiders hinted that Sheila might have something powerful to share, something personal. And most shocking of all, that it involved Prince, a man whose legacy remains virtually untouchable. When her name officially appeared on the witness list, the courtroom buzzed with anticipation. Could this truly be happening? Would Sheila E., one of Prince's closest confidants, speak on his behalf in this trial against this man? And when she finally stepped forward, the room fell silent. This wasn't just another witness. This wasn't gossip. This was personal. Her words didn't just carry weight. They carried the presence of someone who's no longer here to speak for himself. The idea that Prince had something to say and that Sheila E. might be the one trusted to say it sent ripples through the courtroom and beyond. Everyone leaned in. What did she know? What would she reveal? And most importantly, how would Diddy respond? Because in that moment, everything hung in a balance. The glitz, the power, the legacy. The next chapter of this trial wasn't just about evidence anymore. It was about truth. And Sheila E's testimony was about to send shockwaves no one saw coming.
I'm gonna go to Prince's house to the Diddy party where Tyrese is performing and Demi Moore and Ashton Kutcher are swinging on swings. That is what's happening on the other side of the wall. And so the one thing that makes this party different than a Jamie Foxx party or any other celebrity party that wrangles a bunch of young women or guys or whatever too, is that Diddy didn't let you bring your security in the party.
But here's the twist. What if Prince had the cameras rolling the whole time? He was known for being private, calculated, and always in control. So what if he had incriminating footage and that's why he never attended the parties? Well, some folks definitely believe he may have kept the footage or even handed it over to someone before he passed. And now whispers are growing that his name could come up in court. Child, this trial is about to be one for the books, and I'm here for all of it. Okay, of course we already have a few names that came up during the jury selection, and some of them are people we never really expected to make the cut, like Michelle Williams, Robert Downey Jr., Mike Myers, and Lauren London. But then there are names we definitely expected to come up, like Cassie, who filed the first lawsuit. Remember, Cassie said in her lawsuit that a lot of things that happened to her were witnessed by Diddy's staff and employees of Bad Boy Entertainment, entertainment and Diddy's related businesses, but no one dared to speak up. In fact, these assistants were the ones tasked with the responsibility of taking gifts to Cassie after a DV incident. And Cassie even said in the lawsuit that the assistants were also the ones who would help to set up the freak-offs where everything took place, including by setting up the hotel suites with baby oil and Astroglide. Cassie even said in the lawsuit that after one of the incidents, Diddy's head of security and assistant saw her, and they both began to cry. So we expect a lot of these staff members to be summoned. Anywho, Harve Pierre, who was implicated in a lawsuit against Diddy filed by a Jane Doe, also made the cut. She claimed Harve Pierre convinced her to fly from Detroit to New Jersey, where she was allegedly SA'd by him and Diddy. Other than Harve, Young Miami, who was on Diddy's payroll and was allegedly even a transporter of substances, was also mentioned in the jury selection process. Someone else on the list is Dallas Austin. And all I could gather is that the producer was a childhood friend of Kim Porter, Diddy's late wife, who became a point of conversation as people speculated if Diddy had something to do with her sudden death. There's also Lorianne Gibson, who filed a complaint about Diddy to the police back in 2007, claiming Diddy picked up a chair, threatening her on the set of MTV's Making the Band. Aubrey O'Day was also mentioned, but she has been outspoken in her support for Cassie going public with her allegations against Diddy. And she also accused him of making his own inappropriate advances towards her. Former Danity Kane member Dawn Richard also made the cut. But we also know that she previously sued Diddy, accusing him of SA. The suit accused Diddy of beginning his alleged tirade when she began filming MTV's Making the Band.
Yo, what? Yo, how many? Well, they said it's mad lawsuits and this is all these people gonna be on the stand. Yo,
The room fell silent as Sheila E. stepped up to the witness stand. Her posture was steady, her expression calm, but behind her eyes, something deeper stirred. This wasn't just another celebrity testifying. This was Sheila E. in the weight of what she was about to reveal. Everyone in that courtroom felt it. Reporters leaned in, pen scribbling furiously. Spectators in the gallery edged forward, barely breathing. Even the judge straightened in his chair, as if bracing for what was coming. This wasn't just testimony. This was something else, was something personal, something explosive. Sheila E. began slowly, carefully. Her voice carried the weight of memory, deliberate, intimate, unmistakably real. She spoke first of Prince, not as the icon the world revered, but as a man she knew, private, meticulous, fiercely protective of his thoughts, his truth. There were pauses, moments where she gathered herself, a quiet sign of how deeply this testimony cut. And then she pivoted to Diddy. Sheila described the conversation, one of the last deep talks she ever had with Prince, a moment where he, the ever-guarded visionary, lowered his shield. She didn't jump into names right away, but the tension in the room thickened with every passing word. Prince, she said, had grown concerned, disillusioned with where the industry was heading, and who was leading it. There then, she dropped the words that sent a shockwave through the room. He told me, asterisk, watch people like him. Her voice didn't shake it. IT stung, soft but sharp, controlled but cutting, and own name was needed. Everyone in that courtroom knew who him was. Diddy, seated just feet away, shifted uncomfortably. The air pulsed with energy. Gasps rippled to the crowd. A few murmurs escaped, but they were quickly silenced by the moment's gravity. Sheila pressed on. Prince, she said, had warned her about a certain influence creeping into Music Point One that prioritized profit over purpose, that an approach he described as a poison, eroding the very soul of the art form he had dedicated his life to. Prince believed that people like Diddy were turning music into a product, not a passion, she said. He feared it would taint everything he and others had worked so hard to build. There was no drama in her voice and no need for theatrics. IT felt like a memory that had haunted her, one she had carried in silence for years, and now she was laying it bare. For a few heartbeats, it felt like even the walls were listening, because this wasn't just about Diddy. This was about legacy, not about artistry, not about Prince. And for those in the room, it felt as though the ghost of Prince himself had walked in, not with music, not with fanfare, but with a message, a warning. The reaction was immediate. Gasps, disbelief, people exchanging stunned glances, some with eyes wide, some shaking their heads. Diddy's legal team turned toward him, faces unreadable. Meanwhile, reporters were already typing headlines that would dominate the next day's news cycle. This wasn't just a legal turning point. It was a cultural one to whether Sheila E. did this out of loyalty, conscience, or both. One thing was clear. She wasn't just delivering testimony. She was delivering truth. And in doing so, she had just changed the entire trajectory of this trial. Because when Prince speaks, even from beyond the grave, the world listens.
Expect a bunch of other names to come up during the trial, but like I said, Prince was not on my bingo card. And especially not about him allegedly having a tape on Diddy. Makes me wonder, could this have had anything to do with Prince's death? Could this be the deep, dark secret about his death, y'all? Well, we know that Prince knew a few days before his death that it was the end of the road for him, and he even posted a picture of himself which contained a since-deleted message, just when you thought you were safe. In fact, during his final appearance at a party at Paisley Park, just after his reported treatment and days before his death, Prince reportedly told attendees, wait a few days before you waste any prayers. And just like he had predicted, Prince died at age 57 after being found unresponsive at his estate in Minnesota. At the time, health officials determined Prince died of an accidental fentanyl OD after unknowingly taking counterfeit Vicodin laced with the highly potent synthetic opioid. But it never made sense that clean-living Prince died of an OD.
Did he have health problems?
That I don't know, right? What I know is that he was really health conscious.
Right.
He was a vegan. He didn't abuse alcohol. I didn't know of him abusing drugs. He worked out, so, that also really concerned me because it made me think that, wow, so you mean you do all these things to take care of yourself and you die so young?
So the thing about Prince is that he fought with people a lot before he died, especially over ownership of and control over his music. He waged a career-long battle against any company that he felt stood in the way of artists' rights and money. And allegedly, he paid the ultimate price for that, death. Whether Warner Brothers was involved or not with having him unalived is still up for debate. But a lot of his fans definitely think that they were involved in his death. See, he was signed to Warner Music in 1977 when he was just 18. And even though the album he released between 1978 and 1981 did not do that well, he was kept on the label, as he was regarded as a musician that reflected well on Warner, which at the time was a company that appeared to invest long-term in serious talent. In 1982, 1 year after MTV launched, Prince released more music, and he went top 10 in the US for the first time, and became part of a new breed of musicians who understood the power of the music video as a way to market an artist and build their own iconography and mythology. At this point, fans were copying his look, and by 1984, with the release of Purple Rain, he was arguably the biggest and certainly the most exciting pop star on the planet. But it reached a point where Prince didn't like how Warner owned and controlled his name, as well as any music released under that name. He even dramatically changed his name to that of a symbol and was referred to as Symbol, Squiggle, or the artist formerly known as Prince. And he was actually pretty vocal about what was happening.
Before Sheila E. even took the stand, Diddy sat like stone, sharp suit, sculpted expression. He looked every bit the music mogul, polished, poised, and in control. But the tension, it clung to him like static in the air. Observers noticed the cracks beneath that carefully composed image, the subtle glance to his attorneys, the tightening of his tie, the occasional shift in his seat, like the leather beneath him had grown uncomfortable. IT wasn't panic. Not yet, but it was the body language of a man bracing for something he couldn't spin, control, or silence. Then Sheila E. took the stand, and everything began to change at IT first. Diddy remained stoic, his expression unreadable. He leaned back in his chair, eyes fixed forward, the embodiment of composure. But as Sheila began recounting her connection to Prince, that stillness began to fracture. Her voice was calm, clear, unshaken, and it carried the kind of weight that no courtroom objection could dismiss. She spoke not just as a witness, but as a keeper of Prince's final truths, and then she said it. He told me, watch people like him. The air in the courtroom seemed to freeze, and so did Diddy. The faint, knowing smirk he'd worn up until then, gone by in its place. A clenched jaw, narrowed eyes, he leaned forward, hands stiff on the table, as if grounding himself. According to reporters just feet away, he looked like he wanted to speak, like the words were on the edge of his lips. But he stopped himself. One observer claimed they heard a faint sound, a low chuckle. Not quite disbelief, not quite anger. Something in between, something darker. Whatever it was, it cut through the room, and it left an impression that as Sheila continued, describing Prince's disdain for those who put profit over artistry. Diddy's composure all but evaporated. He broke eye contact, looked down, fidgeted with a pen, rolling it between his fingers, the confident mogul image cracking. Murmurs filled the courtroom, not from the testimony alone, but from watching him react to IT in a space where emotional control is currency. Diddy suddenly looked like he was running short. Legal analysts would later pick apart those few moments, the shift in posture, the silent tension, the flicker of something behind his eyes. Was it guilt, anger, or shock that Prince, the untouchable icon, was now posthumously turning into trial's most damning voice? The truth, it didn't matter. Perception did. And in that moment, perception said Diddy wasn't just listening, he was rattled. It was a glimpse of vulnerability from a man who built an empire on being untouchable, and it struck harder than any headline. Now, with Sheila's testimony echoing to the courtroom and the world beyond, the question isn't just what the jury heard, it's what they saw and whether that flicker in Diddy's armor might be the moment everything began to unravel.
Today's cross-examination focusing heavily on Ventura's allegation that Combs raped her in 2018 after they had ended their relationship, which he denies. The defense showing text messages between the former couple the day after the alleged rape, including one in which Ventura sent a heart emoji to Combs. Combs' team also trying to poke holes in Ventura's timeline.
That is not the gotcha moment the defense attorneys think it is. I mean, at the end of the day, witnesses are not great on specific dates, particularly when they go back years ago.
The defense also pointing to a text exchange between Ventura and Combs from 2012, in which she wrote, "I don't want to freak off for the last time. I want it to be the first time for the rest of our lives." At times today, the defense appeared to struggle to maintain momentum, facing frequent objections by prosecutors and regularly stopping Ventura's questioning to whisper together. Combs appeared to be actively involved, passing his lawyers notes. In a striking exchange with Combs' lawyers, Ventura saying, despite it all, "I don't hate him. I have love for the past and what it was."
We also saw musician Dawn Richard take the stand. She said that she witnessed Combs be violent with Ventura over the course of their relationship. I just want to remind everyone that Combs denies all of the allegations against him. Back to you.
Sheila E's testimony wasn't just another courtroom moment. It was a seismic shift, a bombshell, the kind that doesn't just rattle the room. It rewrites the narrative entirely. Her long-standing, well-known bond with Prince had already given her presence a sense of gravity. But when she claimed he, Prince, had warned her specifically about Diddy's influence in the music industry, the entire courtroom went still. Watch people like him. That phrase, as Sheila repeated it, cut through the air like a knife. It was simple, but chilling. Coming from Prince, a man known for guarding his words as fiercely as his music, it was no small accusation. He wasn't prone to gossip. He wasn't careless with judgment SO for him to single out someone Diddy as a threat, or at the very least, a symbol of what was wrong with the industry. That was heavy, and everyone felt it. The jury's reaction remains to be seen. But in the court of public opinion, it's already making waves. Diddy's carefully crafted image, business titan, cultural icon, unshakable mogul, took a hit in real time. He didn't explode, he didn't lash out. But he didn't need it in high-stakes settings like this. Even the smallest shift is magnified. And Diddy's discomfort, the subtle tension in his jaw, the stiffness in his posture, the downward glance as Sheila spoke, became its own form of testimony. Critics saw it as a crack in armor, and for many watching, that was enough. Some argue it humanized him, made him look less like an invincible mogul and more like a man under pressure. But others, and there are many, see it as validation that Sheila's words struck a nerve, and Diddy knew it. The timing couldn't be worse. Already under fire from a growing list of controversies and legal battles, this was the last kind of headline he needed. And while Sheila's testimony may not be concrete evidence, legal experts agree that motion asterisk matters, especially in front of the jury. And this wasn't just anyone's opinion. This was Prince. Even posthumously, his name carries near-mythic credibility. Point one legal analyst sum it up best. When Prince speaks, even from beyond the grave, people listen. That kind of cultural authority is impossible to ignore. And then there's a public fallout. Outside the courtroom, Sheila E's words lit up social media like wildfire. Prince fans, fiercely loyal, deeply protective, flooded timelines with messages like, Prince knew all along. Diddy was never about the art. It sparked debate, reignited old questions, and changed the tone of the conversation. This is no longer just a legal battle. It's a war over Asterisk's reputation. Legacy, symbolism. Asterisk Prince isn't here to explain his words, but through Sheila, they felt alive, echoing louder than Diddy could have anticipated. And now, when the jury walks into deliberation, those echoes will be in a room with them. The big question, Was Sheila's testimony a faithful memory of a private warning or a weaponized moment dropped at just the right time? Does it even matter? Jurors are human, and human beings remember moments, especially the ones charged with emotion, legacy, and cultural. Wait, the media frenzy hasn't let up. Every outlet is replaying Sheila's testimony. Every headline is asking the same question. Did this change everything? Some analysts say yes. Others urge caution, reminding viewers that compelling testimony doesn't always equal legal victory. But no matter where this trial goes next, one thing is clear. Prince's legacy is now part of the story, and that might be the most unpredictable twist of all.
In her final day on the stand, Cassie Ventura spoke again about the day Combs brutally beat her in a hotel hallway in 2016. Ventura, who is potentially days away from giving birth, testifying that Combs was blackout at the time of the assault from drugs and alcohol. At one point reading a text she sent him after the violent attack, "I am not a rag doll, I am someone's child." Following 20 hours of testimony this week, her attorney Douglas Wigdor speaking outside the courthouse, reading a statement from Ventura.
I hope that my testimony has given strength and a voice to other survivors and can help others who have suffered to speak up and also heal from abuse and fear.
Celebrity culture thrives on image, but what happens when legacy collides with reputation? In a courtroom governed by law but shaped by perception, Sheila E. gave voice to Prince, a voice that doesn't fade with time, but echoes louder with meaning. Her testimony didn't just revisit the past, it reshaped the present. For Diddy, already entangled in controversy, it added another layer to a story that's becoming harder to control. And for the public, it raised a haunting question. How much power does a voice from beyond still hold? Asterisk, asterisk, in a world where reputation can fall apart in a single moment. Some legacies remain untouchable. Prince's, unshaken, undeniable, unforgotten, but Diddy's, now under the harshest light it's faced. Why, Edie? I asked this the beginning of the end for his empire, or just another storm he survives? One thing is certain, we're all watching what happens next.